Thank you very much, Irfan. I've got some notes here, but I'm going to try freestyling it. So if I'm rubbish, it's not because I'm a rubbish speaker. I'm actually amazing. It's just I'm not looking at my notes. Okay, look. So that makes complete sense, right? If people see you and believe a story about you, that's the way they view you. Everything you do is viewed through that story. It's through that lens. Exactly what Irfan was saying about that black man hanging from a rope. Well, if he's a radical hate preacher and he's hanging from a rope, well, justice served, right? That's the story, right? That's why those people were smiling at the bottom. Justice served. The story they were told was there was something inherently evil about these people. And this was a bad black man. He had to be taught a lesson. And they taught him a lesson. And how happy they were. You see, stories have an impact. And we have a story being told about us. We're not telling the story. Someone is telling the story about us, for us. They create the story, the words in that story, and the identity of the people in that story. And the world understands us through that lens, through that story. So where's that clicker? Can I So first let me talk about identity, right? It's an important concept to get before I move on to the next part. Identity. When I say story, our story, what's our story? Who are we? British people, Bangladeshis, Pakistanis, some Arabs. Who are we? What's our story? When I talk about our story, who are we? It's important. Do we have a collective story, or are we all individual stories of our own? And the people who oppress us often use that. They understand identity better than we do. Our mosques are only interested in telling us, what foot to enter the toilet with. But while our oppressors is psychologically working out how to break us down. Let me give you an example. Mo Farah wins double gold in the Olympics. His story, a British person wins the Olympics, double gold, brilliant, brilliant for England. Right? What's wrong with that? He is British. He's got a British passport, lives in Britain. Nothing wrong with that. But then, a little while later, there's some paedophiles up north. They got a British passport. They live in Britain. But they're Muslims. Now the identity changes. On a negative, we're all Muslims. On a positive, hey, no, they're British. You understand how they can change identity when they control the story. They tell you when you're bad, and they tell you when you're good. You're a collective when you're bad, and you're an individual when you're good. When you read in the newspapers, when I start to understand this identity kind of game, now when I see a newspaper, I don't see 50 Iraqis dead, I see 50 Muslims dead. When I see 4 million Palestinians ethnically cleansed, I don't see 4 million Palestinians ethnically cleansed, I see 4 million Muslims ethnically cleansed. Wherever I see a Muslim dead. Wherever I see Muslims ethnically cleansed. Wherever I see Muslims tortured. You want to call them Iraqis, they're Muslims in Iraq, but it's still Muslims, and you ethnically cleanse them. That's my story. You see, without your identity, without your story, you were a victim of their story. Some people became Uncle Toms. I'm not going to mention any names. I used to be an extremist, but now I'm okay. That was the worst case. And the best case? An apologist. I'm not a terrorist. Yeah, those baddies. I'm all right. I still remember when I was younger, this is when young kids were racist, probably too young to know they were racist. And it was all white school. I was, only a few Asian kids in there. I used to go, I hate Packies, but you're all right. I'm all right. They're those Packies, they smell, but I'm all right. I'm not an extremist, it's the rest of them. We had no story. And without a story, we had no cause. And this is very, very, very important. This is the other big thing I want to talk about, a story. When you own your own story, like the black people owned their story, they had a cause. What's the purpose of your life? Is it just you? Is there nothing greater that you live for? You heard about colonised Islam. Even your Islam was just about you. Oh, I'm wearing the right clothes. I've got my trousers above my ankles. Me, 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 me. I prayed Salah. Your people massacred, murdered, slaughtered. You demonised. They hate you. You can't get jobs. Oh, but I'm wearing my trousers above my ankles. Me. Nothing greater in your lives. That's your story. That's the story we gave ourselves. So without a story, without an identity, some people took to chasing money. Makes sense. Because if my life is the greatest thing in this world, that's my story, then why not chase money? Good. I'm a professional Muslim, as they like to tell everyone. I'm a professional Muslim. I'm not like the other people. I wear a suit. Yeah? And look at my car. That's their life. And they live and die and go to their graves as professional Muslims. And that's all they ever chased, money. Sick of these professional Muslims. Every time I see them, first thing they come out, all right, bruv, what are you doing these days? He don't care what I'm doing. He just wants to know he's got a better job than me. Let's face it, that's true. That's what a professional Muslim is. Why shouldn't he be that? That's his life. That's his story. We never gave him any different story. And then you have these other Muslims, again, with no story of our own. They're given a story from the media. He lives his life as a gangster rapper or a Bollywood star. He vicariously seeing himself on MTV in his wildest imaginations. And every time he meets you, he's overly gangster or overly Bollywood. He knows everything about this weird world on television because that's his life. That's how he views his identity. That's all he is. How tough and mean he looks on the streets. His brother's being butchered. He's too much of a coward to stand up against it. Like tough and mean on the streets with you. Don't eyeball me, bruv. Blah, blah, blah. And off they go stabbing each other. Right? But they haven't got the guts to stand up while their own brothers and sisters being raped and tortured around the world. Because they've got no story for a greater cause. Why would they stand up for anyone? There's no story to stand up for anyone. They would never be Malcolm X. Malcolm X was a drug dealer. A gangster. But when a story reached him that was greater than himself, then he realized, I will die for my people. And he died for his people. He was gunned down for his people. Read the book. It's at the back. A story transforms a human being. It makes them live for something greater than what they were. No one would know him without a story. He'd just be another boxer. Read about his life. Believe me, it's a miracle of a story. You see, what is our story? What is us as Muslims? What is our story? Some Muslims believe, majority of Muslims believe, because that's all they learn, is 1500 years ago, a man came out of the desert and gave them Islam. Then nothing. Then they landed on the shores of England looking for a job. That's your story. That's your history. That's all you know. Or maybe we have a different story. What is our history? You just read some of the small facts of just a couple of cities in the history of the greatness of Muslims. Muslims built the first universities in the world. The first major urban hospital was created by Muslims in the 10th century. By the 13th century, Baghdad will have 36 public libraries and 100 booksellers. We had the world's first think tank. We helped lay the foundation of modern mathematics, astronomy, chemistry, medicine, and literature. In this city, Baghdad, was born algebra, advanced trigonometry, the names of the stars, the heart of philosophy and literature. And across the world, not far from here, in another Muslim city, Cordoba. At its peak, the 11th century Cordoba became the most advanced and civilized city in the world. It had 50 hospitals, a high public literacy expressing libraries, public and private life, and it possessed in one Muslim city more books than the whole of the continent of Europe. Now, ask a Muslim to read a book and see how far they run. Look at your history and what you've become. And then came colonization. I'm just gonna... So can you move back? Back, please. Back to that awful image. Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to talk about the Mughal Empire, a little bit about that. Yeah? Sorry. Mughal Empire, sorry, I'll let him sort that out while I continue to talk. Yeah? I'm not going to talk about the rest of the Muslim world. It's too long and the horrors are too great. Yeah? But I'll just talk a little bit about it. When the British destroyed the Mughal Empire, it was the richest place on earth. It was 25% of the world's wealth. Bengal, a province of the Mughal Empire, was invaded in the 1750s, and Bengal, believe it or not, was the equivalent wealth of Britain. When they colonized us in the 1750s, they went about destroying, robbing, murdering their way across their lands, our lands. And this is a historical fact. In 1770, one of the people there wrote this. Millions went on dying. People sold their cattle. They sold their implements of agriculture. They devoured their seed grain. They sold their sons and daughters till at length no buyer of children could be found. They ate leaves off trees and grass off the fields, and in June 1770 it was affirmed that the living were feeding off the dead. This is a place that was the equivalent wealth of the UK, and 20 years later it was starving to death. In fact, 1/3 of all the people in Bengal starved to death due to British foreign policy. It was so cruel that even as they were starving, the British Governor-General demanded taxes from the people there. And this is what was written. It was said that he stripped naked the wives of tax defaulters, dragged them from their homes, put their nipples of the women in the sharp edges of spears and tore them from their bodies. This is families who couldn't pay their tax because they were literally dying. In fact, the wealth they stole from the Mughal Empire is the wealth that funded the Industrial Revolution. And when we rebelled, as Irfan said earlier, in 1857, I think it was Irfan, might have been a different speaker, yeah? The resultant was that the British killed 10,000 times more than the rebels killed. And not just that, we were charged for it. They charged us £50 million of that era, £50 million for the cost of the troops to kill us and the bullets that they used. It's a historical fact. That's your history. And yet, in 1914, when we went to war, England went to war, it was the colonised people of India that paid the equivalent of £1 trillion to the war effort. For all our brutality, for all our oppression, we still paid for their war, for their freedom. The freedom that they denied us in 1914. 60,000 people died in that war, from us. It was our money that funded their freedom, and our dead paid for it. That's your history. So if that's your past, what's your present? I'm telling you your story. Maybe you disagree with me and you can challenge me in question time. Somalia, destroyed by America-backed invasions and warlords. Palestine, destroyed and ethnically cleansed by Israeli Zionists, backed by America. Afghanistan, destroyed by Western invasion and occupation. Iraq, destroyed by Western invasion and occupation. Pakistan, bombed daily by drones and destabilised. Iran, sanctioned and destabilised. Egypt, democratically elected, overthrown government backed by American and Saudi money. And it doesn't end there. I could go on and on and on and on. And it's a crime we don't know. When it comes to torture, one country alone has kidnapped 3,000 Muslims. Just one country. I'm not talking about Israel. I'm not talking about Europe. And they kidnap enough there themselves. You don't read me, read Cruel Britannia. It's an amazing book. You can't sleep at night after reading that. America I'm talking about. And let me tell you, you walk out of your house, they pick you up, you don't get any trial, you don't get any justice, you don't get your family even told where you are. They just know that you're gone, you're missing. And one such story that's leaked out is two Muslims, I don't care about their ethnicity, found dangling from a ceiling. They'd been there for days, they'd been tortured, their legs had been beaten so badly that they died of their wounds. And the doctor said that if they had survived, they would have had to amputate their legs because they were so badly beaten. That's two. What about the thousands that we don't know about? That's your present. That's what I'm going to argue is your present. You may think differently, but then I think you haven't read enough books. So what's your future? And this is important. You see, your future in this story is you're the oppressed, you're not the oppressor. In this story, what if I said your demand, after all this hell that you're going through, your history, your pain, current pain and suffering, what's your demand to the world? You're telling the world something, what is it? What if you simply said to the world, I just want my freedom. I just want equality. I just want justice. Those few words, small words, are so revolutionary that it would overturn the whole narrative against you. The whole world would see you differently. Because who can deny freedom, justice and equality? Firstly, it's understandable. Every non-Muslim can understand it. It's not like Sharia, if it's Sharia. No one understands that. Sorry guys, we're not living in Arabia. She could be understood by billions of people across the world. Two, your own people finally had a cause greater than themselves. Yeah? They had a cause that was far, far, far greater than living their life for money or living their life as a gangster rapper or a professional Muslim. Look at this, it's so interesting. This says everything about what I'm talking about. These are people who demanded freedom, justice, and equality. It gave them a cause. So now they're willing to go against this, right? Also look here, here's a white guy with a beard. Probably ain't a Muslim. But the point is this, he understands that that's right. The people out there don't hate you because of who you are. They hate you because of the story that's told to them. But what if you told them a different story? Surely they'd stand with you. White people ain't evil. They just don't understand you. When I say white, I mean white non-Muslims who read the media every day. Yeah, they get into this thinking, Islamophobic thinking. They just I don't understand you, and you haven't told your story. You need to tell your story, and you can defend it. All the facts are with us. So for the first time, I'm going to wrap up. So I'm just going over time very, very quickly, right? So for the first time ever, it gave you a cause. It gave your whole community a cause. How dare you deny your people, your own people? You could say to them, yeah, how dare you deny my people's freedom? The labels like Islamists, jihadists, militants, and all this racist propaganda slurs were language of a hollow, invented story that they invented. And as soon as you use the word freedom, as soon as you use that word freedom, all those slurs meant nothing. What's an Islamist when you're fighting for freedom? Is that what I am? Anyone who demands freedom, then I'm Islamist, then cool, I'm Islamist. I'm a terrorist for saying I want my freedom. It just doesn't make sense anymore. Yeah? You're an extremist. But without a story, what am I doing right now? If we don't have that freedom story, what am I now? I'm their story. I'm a hate preacher, right? Right now there'll be someone out there writing about me hate preaching and you radicalizing. Because that's all they can understand. You can only understand you in those binary ways. Because that's the story out there. Tell your own story. Don't let them tell your story for you. Don't be scared. You see, without a demand, without our demand for freedom, without our narrative, we could be murdered across the world and still be blamed for it. Still be seen as deserving of death. Because all we were extremists. Whatever we do was always negative. Now I'm going to leave you on this. I'm going to say, look, saying your story is not easy. It seems so easy when saying, oh, I get it, what's so powerful? But no one wants you to tell their story. No one wants you to tell your story. Because as soon as your story gets out there, their story is over, and they spent billions of pounds ensuring, and decades ensuring that story against you was out there. And it gets destroyed as soon as you turn and say, how dare you take away my freedom? How dare you take away my justice? Everyone understands you in a different way now. And they're not going to allow that. So it's going to take bravery. But I say, be brave. If it is not now, it's never. The tide is turning against Muslims. And if you haven't got the courage, like great people before us have had the courage to stand up and fight and just speak out. That's our jihad. Speak out. The jihad that you've heard throughout this talk that they took away from us. Our jihad is to, as the Prophet said, to speak out in the face of a tyrant ruler. And that's all we're doing, speaking out and saying, we want our justice, we want our freedom, and we want our equality. And I'm going to leave you with one video of a man far, far, far greater than me, and far, far, far greater, sadly, than the Muslim leaders we have across the UK today, and to show you how he put in his mouth the words of freedom for his people, and how non-Muslims and his own people understood their cause. And I would hope that one day, someone far more articulate than me and the speakers that you heard would be that man for us.
We declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, to be respected as a human being, to be given the rights of a human being in this society, on this